Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Catching Up. I'm John Benninger, and today my guest is Ivan Hyman from Ingredion. He's the Senior Director of Channel Development, Emerging Business, and Customer Co-Creation. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, John. Happy to be here.
Yeah, great to have you here and really looking forward to this conversation. First, before we jump in, how are you? How are all the wonderful people there at Ingredion?
I'm doing fine. I can tell you personally, I actually live in New Jersey in kind of the heart of all this craziness that we're living in. So, but I'm fine. My family's fine. I'd say at Ingredion, we're doing fine. I think like every company, we're affected. We're all working from home, doing lots of Microsoft Teams calls and Zoom calls and things of that sort. I can say that it's been, from our leadership, it's been great because we've always had a very sort of care first value and safety first value. So it's very much around how the employees feel and safety of the employees and business continuity, of course, is critical for us. But, there's been great messaging and I think really action from our leadership around, what the company's doing to make sure that we're keeping people safe, and that whole safety culture is really, really important.
Yeah, it comes in handy at a time like this. I mean, it's always important, but at a moment like this, having that built into the culture of the company is really valuable.
I couldn't agree more. I'll tell you, I mean, look, I've been with the company about 8 years, and I think when I first came to Ingredion, I was almost overwhelmed by how strong of a safety culture they had. Because, look, we have factories, we have facilities, people can get hurt in these facilities. You don't feel it in an office, but we now have a global PMO that's reporting directly to our CEO, coordinating all the events of this whole COVID-19 situation. So, I mean, you don't just put those things into place quickly when you don't have that kind of culture. And we have that culture, and it's great. And I think, served us very well in this environment.
Yeah, and it gives people confidence. They know that the organization is doing the right thing for the right reasons, has their back. And putting that safety first, especially right now, because people have so much going on in their lives, and there is so much uncertainty. It's nice to, and I can relate to this because our organization is the same. We're a fairly large company out of the UK, and
Sure.
that same culture of safety and putting the people first and always doing the right thing is built into the very foundation of the business, and it's helped us a lot too. So thankful for that. I want to talk a little bit about what's going on in the market and the trends and that sort of thing. But first, maybe you could just share for the folks that are checking this out a little bit about what your role is there. I've given your title in the beginning of this, but that's a lot of words. Can you break it down for us a little bit when you talk about channel development and emerging business and customer co-creation, what those sorts of things mean?
Sure. So, I mean, I'll put it in pretty simplistic terms. So, we have our model to the marketplace is often we'll have salespeople, often coordinated together with technical service people that we often call on our manufacturing partners who are our customers. Well, the way I would actually describe it is a lot of the things that I'm responsible for in North America are kind of outside of that typical box that we might have operated in for a while. So I've been responsible for our emerging business initiative for a long time, which is around how do we deal with a lot of the smaller and emerging companies. We started a relationship with the Hatchery in Chicago. We're part of Mista, which is the venture in the Bay Area, together with some other large CPGs and a bunch of startups. More recently, I've been able to gain additional responsibility in the organization where I've gained additional responsibility over other channels. So if you think about sort of emerging business and how we deal with smaller companies as a channel, we're also looking at food service and how we deal with the food service channel because it's a growth area for us as an organization. We're doing work around the pet channel and pet food. We're now, because of COVID, we've always had private label on the radar screen, but we're doing a little bit of a shift. So that's something that falls within scope. E-commerce. We do have a website that actually sells ingredients to customers as part of the emerging business, but that's part of it as well. We're also doing work, as you know, Ingredion acquired TIC Gums some time ago, and part of that team is now reporting to me as well. So for example, when somebody calls a hotline or has a chat function, so that's part of my team as well. And then beyond that, we have a more relatively newer initiative around customer co-creation, which is how we deal with our customers. I'd say if you think of the continuum of sort of typical technical service where we will help somebody with ingredient, this is a much more focused, engaged approach with our customers. And that's something that, we're getting much more involved with. And I actually have somebody on my team reporting to me there. So it's a lot of stuff, a lot of work. It's exciting. I have some really good team members, and I often see my job is to help them and move the roadblocks out of the way to make them successful. So it's a lot of stuff, but I think Ingredion is doing some really interesting things, and I think we're in the forefront of it, to some degree, the tip of the spear of some of the newer things that we're working on.
Yeah, it's something that I think probably most people who are going to be watching this are familiar with Ingredion, but if they're not, something that I think really sets Ingredion apart that I've seen over the years is that focus on partnering with customers, and it's not just a transaction. Obviously, Ingredion sells a lot of ingredients. That's kind of the transactional piece of the business, but there's a lot of other stuff that goes on that's not just a transaction, from the trends, consumer trends, and watching those to working through concepts with customers and really being a partner in their business. Maybe you could chat a little bit about that, because I think it comes to the core philosophy of how your organization serves the market.
Sure. I mean, I think from big customers to smaller customers, I mean, we do a lot of things that you talked about. I mean, I'll give an example on our emerging business team where, I mean, if an entrepreneur or startup organization wants to engage with us, whether it's through an organization like the Hatchery or frankly just picks up the phone and calls us, it wouldn't be uncommon to get somebody who has a technical food science background on the phone, potentially make recommendations, even give them a startup formulation, do a little bit of lab work potentially as well. Transactionally we sell ingredients, but it takes a lot to sell an ingredient, right? When someone says, hey, I need something to help my protein level in a specific formulation, well, we're going to peel the different layers of the onion back so that they understand, and on the flip side, obviously with our larger customers, we have dedicated teams dealing with our global key accounts that we deal with and things of that sort, with literally dedicated technical service people to some of those accounts. So, I'd say on both sides, we can play that role, and we're happy to. I mean, I've always had the philosophy personally that, you want people to know that the sign on the door says that we're open, that we're here to do business with you, and we're going to be friendly and engaging. We can't help everybody all the time. Sometimes our ingredients don't work for whatever the application that they're looking for. But we're, I think, upfront and straight and honest with people. And the great thing is that, because we have such a breadth in our portfolio, that most of the time we can find a solution for what customers are actually looking for.
Yeah. Question for you along following up on the trends part of that. Sure. Ingredion has been tracking consumer trends for a long time, and that's a key part of how you work with these companies to help them understand what people want, what consumers want. With this whole COVID thing that's been going on now, is that affecting consumer trends? Are you seeing any impacts there? You watch them so closely, or has it not really made much of a change in what consumers want?
Look, I don't have my crystal ball, John, but it's totally too, it's probably too early to tell what's going to pan out. But what I can say is, I mean, we've seen a couple of things so far, right? We've seen that a lot of the emerging brands, for example, the smaller brands, let's say under $25 million, I mean, they are doing well, and they're still doing well. How they will do, in 6 months from now, not sure. But what we're seeing is that because there's a lot of growth in that area, even over the period of March, where people were sort of going through that stock up period. I mean, we literally did an analysis in IRI to see that kind of information. That there is growth there. So there's also trial on some of those brands. But there's growth across the board on all the retail brands. On the flip side of it, and I mentioned channels, and again, I don't think I'm saying anything that's shocking here, but people are not eating out at restaurants. So all the business that we do that goes to the food service channel, whether it's it could be the breading, our ingredients, a starch that goes to a breading or a coating system, or ingredient that goes to carbonated soft drinks. From a sweetener perspective, well, no one's going to the movies. No one's going to the stadiums. All those things are down right now. Again, I don't think I'm saying anything out of line. That's things that people know. It's very intuitive, but that does come back in the supply chain. So I think there's a big piece for us, which is looking at what's up, what's down. How do we judge what's up and what's down in the marketplace? I mean, people are literally just not going to restaurants. That being said, people, especially some of the larger QSRs, are still thinking about innovation. Actually, the interesting thing that we've seen is, in the beginning parts of this whole pandemic in early March, I think things just stopped for a moment, like for a week or two, things just stopped. It was almost a shock to the system. And then especially a lot of the R&D and product development people, when they had started to have time on their hands, they started thinking about it, time on their hands because they're working from home. We started getting calls again. People started wanting to talk about stuff. So, I mean, there's some projects that have absolutely been pushed off, but on the flip side of it, there are some things that they now have accelerated because they have time to think about it, both big and small companies. So we've seen both sides of it. I mean, we've even seen, talk about trends. There's some of our ingredients within our portfolio can actually be used for hand sanitizer. We've actually seen an uptick in requests for those ingredients that could potentially be used for hand sanitizer. And again, from a demand perspective, that offsets potentially, what would happen when people aren't buying things that go into food service. And again, it's not stuff that, typical consumer might see, but what they do see is the sauce that goes to the food service operator that contains our ingredients, right? Yeah. That's where, we just don't get the orders perhaps. But on the flip side, retail, as you would expect, major stock up, everyone's eating from home, cooking, all that sort of stuff. So we're seeing it on both sides of it. And it's really, what is that balance? How do we manage the balance? How do we check within our own systems to make sure that we can do all the things that are necessary to keep things moving forward? It's tough business, I'll tell you, especially if you have no track on demand. And we're doing the best we can in a very uncertain, literally hour-to-hour situation.
Yeah, things change so fast right now, and we don't know what that horizon looks like yet. We just don't have that visibility yet to say, oh, in 3 months it's going to look like this, or in 6 months it's going to look like that. It's a major shock to the system. So global supply chains, distribution channels, just all of it is just in a state of flux right now. But that also creates opportunity, I think, as much as it can be challenging. Absolutely. I think we're going to see some incredible innovation come out of this. It seems like anytime with this much stress, you watch, whether it's technologies or product concepts or just new ways of thinking. I think the food industry is really good at this stuff.
I agree. I mean, I think there's a few things, right? That you're talking about the shift to digital. I mean, look, we're doing this right now. We're talking on Teams. I mean, I've had days where I've had probably 6 to 8 Team/Zoom or Skype calls. So I think just from a communication standpoint, I don't think it's just the food industry, but all industries have shifted to digital as a result. I mean, these are all tools we had. I don't think we use them in the same way that we're all using them now. So that shift just happened, boom, overnight, literally. But as a result of that, I can tell you, even as Ingredion, we become much more digitally engaged. I mean, we've had, particularly with our TIC business, we've had a chat function for a long time where somebody wants to come on the website and start chatting. Well, we officially launched that on Ingredion.us last week, right? So in week one, we had well over 20 chats where we haven't even promoted this at all. We wanted to just make sure that people can know this is a resource. And I would say well over half of those chats were about new products. Were about, hey, I'm working on a project. Of course, we did have a couple that talked about, I need a document or something like that, but which is also very important, by the way, for customers, because what we also have seen is that particularly products that were closer to commercialization, people are trying to get those through the pipeline more quickly because they're also trying to look at, they don't necessarily want one supplier, they want two. Because if one of your suppliers sitting in China and they can't get the product here, how do you make sure that you have redundancy in your supply chain? So I think that's become much more clear to people. But as I mentioned before, even those digital chats, I mean, we're getting specifically for some of our newer ingredients, things like allulose, where we just built a factory in Mexico. We're getting lots of inquiries for that, and we're seeing it literally in week one of launching a chat feature, which we will be promoting more. We've also done some things digitally where we started a series with some customers and our distributor partners around sort of training from afar. where in the past week and a half, we've done sort of virtual training. I know we've done well over 20 to 25 of those virtual trainings with our distributors. And as a result, some of the distributors have actually invited their customers, some major partners for us in our supply chain. And we've been doing it. We've been adapting, and it's been a big push from overall Ingredion management to think about how do we do things and become much more digitally engaged. So, going back to just changes in the food industry, absolutely. But I think it's about changes into how you deal with customers overall. Hopping on a plane and going to a trade show might not happen for a little while. Even if it happens in September, I know you guys are involved with Expo East. I don't know what that's going to look like. And I'm not saying people are talking about canceling it today, but I worry if these events are going to happen in the same way. And I don't think I'm the only one. I don't think that's unique to me.
Absolutely not. That's that's our business, and so we're all over that. But that's the honest situation. People are wondering whether it's trade shows like ours or, like you say, concerts, events, any large gatherings.
Everything.
We just don't have any real visibility yet into when that comes back, and when it does, what it looks like, frankly. I know that we're working in the event business. We're part of a number of groups that are putting a lot of time into sorting that out. How do you ensure safety? How do you make sure that, what does an event look like? And how do you deliver on the expectations that people have, but also make sure that you're doing it with safety as the number one priority? That's right. A huge question right now.
How do you keep people 6 feet apart at a trade show? I'll let you guys ponder that one. I'm not quite sure.
Exactly. So, but yeah, so you're right. It's the whole economy. Everything is being affected, but this is where I have great faith in the creativity of humans. We seem to have the ability to figure things out, and that's why I think that as we get through this, whatever that looks like, we're going to see just some ingenious solutions that people come up with to help us manage through all this stuff. And
I will tell you, I think people are really looking towards things like sustainability, right now. I think people are much more conscious of, where do things come from? You hear these micro trends of everyone's baking at home now. Yeah. People are planting gardens. I mean, there's literally a micro trend you see on Instagram. My wife actually did this too, where you can buy scallions and you cut them and then you put them in a glass and then you regrow the scallions. Right. People are thinking, it's about eating, right? But it's about regenerative things. And I think people are thinking about that now. So how does that play back to ingredients? Look, Ingredion has been going that way anyway, right? We made major investments in plant-based proteins over the last year and change. This is public information. We invested almost $200 million on that, right? But the interest of, by the way, that also is also based here in North America. I think that is actually a very strong interest to consumers in North America as we move forward. Look, again, I said it before, I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm happy about a lot of the investments that we've made because I think they are on trend, and I think actually some of these things are going to become even more relevant as we move forward. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, but I don't think plant-based is going away. If anything, if you look at things like, it's taking a lot of news that Trump had to say that some of the meat plants should stay open because of all the outbreaks of things like COVID right now in the different facilities. It doesn't take, you don't have in plant-based products, you don't have those issues, right? So I think those issues are things that people are still going to be continued to. Those types of products are things that are going to be people will continue to be interested in.
If anything, all of this that we're going through, the shared experience that we're all having, in my view, just subjective, is that it's stimulating a lot of these trends. People were already looking to eat healthier foods. Well, however they defined that for themselves. They were starting to take more of an interest in that sustainability piece, or just understanding where these products come from, how are they made, what's the impact agriculturally, and those sorts of things. And all this is doing is just stimulating that, So it's hard to say good things will come of this because it's such a horrible situation. But as an optimist, I have to believe that some good things are coming of this. Like you said, people are cooking at home more. They're learning more about food. Those are good things for the long run, not just for industry, but for public health, I think.
Yeah. We're Ingredion's not in the yeast business, but I'll tell you, you cannot buy yeast anywhere or baking powder on the shelf. So it's interesting to see how this is all playing out. Things that people going out and buying all those brands that they knew before too. People looking for comfort foods at home. Look, we do play in the center store. There's no question about it. So that helps a company like Ingredion for sure. But we recognize the importance of all these other trends. And I look, some of these things are going to go away, and some of these things, I don't know if everyone's going to continue baking when it gets back to normal, so to speak. But I do think that some of these things are going to be here for the long haul. I will say, particularly around consumer behavior, in my own view, someone who has done a lot of work around marketing and things like that, I think the digital shift is here. It's been going there anyway, and if anything, this has just accelerated it. Especially with the millennial generation who's come in, where the people were probably purchasing from their phone to begin with. This is just going to enhance it, right? And the idea of I need to get on a plane to see you or to go to the trade show, that's going to look a little bit different, and it's going to be interesting to see how it's going to play out. And I think, look, I'm very fortunate that I work for a company where at the end of the day, people have to eat. We don't work in the travel business, so to speak, but some of these trends are going to accelerate, and I think Ingredion is well positioned to remain in the forefront of those.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I always like to kind of wrap things up with a question. I ask everybody the same question, and that is, with all this stuff going on right now, it can be overwhelming sometimes. There's a lot of tragedy out there and a lot of uncertainty. What is it that keeps you going? What keeps you positive? What keeps you moving forward with all this going on?
It's a great question. I could say personally, obviously, my family keeps me moving. The fact that they're here, my kids are junior high school and in high school, so they're not little, so they can manage the Zooms on their own. The funny thing is usually when they're on a Zoom call, when I'm on a call at the same time, and the Wi-Fi starts cutting out. These are the real world problems that we're all dealing with. But obviously, your family keeps you going. For me personally, I'll tell you professionally, with Ingredion, working with great people, great leadership, and beyond that, I have a great team, and being able to work with that team and hopefully keep them motivated every day. We've done things like everyone. We've done even last Friday we did a virtual team meeting happy hour. We did a college theme night where we tried to college theme happy hour where everybody put their college sweatshirts on or college garb, just to kind of make it a little bit more fun. Because honestly, you need to make it a little bit more personal. I think you need to have a little bit of levity in the situation. Everyone's dealing with different things, and we recognize that. I think as a company, everyone's dealing with different environment. As I mentioned, look, I live in the New York metro area, so I'm in the middle of all this craziness here, and might have it worse than others in terms of the environment around me. But you got to remain positive. If not, you'll end up going crazy. I can, just getting exercise and making sure I'm staying healthy, eating well, and not having too many happy hours. Let's put it that way.
Right, but you have to have some. You're right. We try to do the same thing, and it can wear on you. So we have to pull together, and I think we're seeing that. We're seeing that in companies like yours, companies like ours, and many of the other wonderful companies. We're seeing that in communities, industries. Again, it just comes back to having faith in each other and supporting each other, and knowing that whatever tomorrow brings, we're going to take it on, and that's what we can do. So, I am glad that Ingredion is here. I'm glad that I'm sure your clients are glad that Ingredion is here, especially as they're dealing with some of this crazy stuff. And maybe we can catch up again, down the road here in a little bit when we get a little more visibility into some of the trends. I'd love to come back to that topic after we get a little more clarity and say, okay, how did things change, or did they change?
I'd like to do that when the time is right. Let's plan it.
Yeah, very cool. All right. Well, hey, have a great week. Thanks for the time today. And if there's anything we can do for your organization, just let us know.
Will do. Thanks so much, John.
All right. Thanks, Evan.